standing in that empty apartment, staring at my graduation cap on the kitchen counter, I never imagined that in just 3 hours, the dean of Northwestern University would be holding up the entire ceremony, just to make sure everyone in that auditorium knew exactly who Jessica Martinez was. But let me start from the beginning, because what happened that morning changed everything. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. The alarm buzzed at 6 a.m. on May 15th, but I was already awake. Graduation day. 4 years of engineering studies, countless all-nighters, and a 3.8 GPA had led to this moment. I'd been planning this day in my head for months. The ceremony at 2 p.m., followed by the family celebration my parents had been organizing since February. My phone lit up with a text from my roommate Sarah Chen, who had already moved out the week before. "Today's the day. So proud of you, Jess. Give your parents my love at the party tonight." I smiled, thinking about the surprise my parents had mentioned. Mom had been mysteriously secretive about the details, only saying they'd invited everyone important and that it would be, quote, a celebration worthy of our engineer daughter. Dad had been equally cryptic, mentioning something about the community center and how proud the whole neighborhood would be. After showering, I slipped into the navy blue dress I'd bought specifically for my graduation gown, something elegant but not too formal, perfect for photos and the party afterward. I'd even gotten my hair professionally done the day before, a rare splurge that left my usually unruly curls in perfect waves. At 8 a.m., I called home, expecting to hear the usual pre-event chaos. Mom barking orders about decorations, Dad struggling with the sound system, maybe my younger brother Carlos complaining about having to help set up tables. Instead, the phone rang 4 times before Mom picked up, her voice strangely subdued. "Morning, sweetheart. Ready for your big day?" "More than ready. What time should I head over to help with setup?" "I know you said the party starts at 5, but I can come earlier too." "Actually, Jessica, we've got everything handled here. You just focus on graduation. We'll see you at the ceremony." Something felt off. Mom was usually a nervous wreck before big events, calling me every hour with updates and questions. I spotted several familiar faces from our neighborhood back home. Mrs. Rodriguez from next door, the Patel family from down the street, even old Mr. Kim who ran the corner market. But no sign of Mom and Dad. They must be in a section I couldn't see from my angle. The auditorium was massive, after all. "Alexandra Martinez," the announcer called. A girl 3 seats down from me stood and walked across the stage. My stomach fluttered. I was next, alphabetically. But the announcer continued. Michael Mason, Jennifer Matthews, David McKay. Confusion washed over me. They'd skipped right past Jessica Martinez. I looked down at my program, double-checking that I was supposed to be there. My name was clearly listed between Alexandra Martinez and Michael Mason. There had to be some mistake. I raised my hand slightly, trying to catch the attention of one of the faculty marshals, but they were all focused on the stage. The ceremony continued, names being called in rapid succession. "Maybe they'll call the Miss names at the end," I whispered to Tom Patterson, who was sitting next to me. "That's what usually happens," he whispered back, but he looked as confused as I felt. The engineering graduates continued filing across the stage. With each name that wasn't mine, my anxiety grew. I kept scanning the crowd for my parents, desperately hoping to make eye contact, to get some reassurance that everything was okay. Finally, they reached the end of the engineering school list. "That concludes our candidates for the McCormick School of Engineering," the announcer said. My heart sank. They were moving on to the next school. I hadn't been called. I looked around frantically. Several faculty members near the stage were huddled together, apparently discussing something. One of them was pointing at a clipboard, shaking his head. Then I saw him, Dean William Harrison himself, walking briskly toward the podium. He was a tall, distinguished man in his 60s who I'd only seen from a distance at department events. What was he doing? The dean took the microphone from the announcer and cleared his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I may have your attention for just one moment." The murmur in the crowd died down. Thousands of eyes turned toward the stage. "It has come to my attention that we have missed calling one of our most outstanding graduates from the McCormick School of Engineering." My cheeks burned. Everyone was looking around, wondering who had been forgotten. I wanted to disappear into my seat. Dean Harrison continued, his voice carrying clearly through the sound system. This young woman has not only excelled academically with a 3.8 GPA, but she's also been a teaching assistant for 3 semesters, conducted groundbreaking research in sustainable energy systems, and was recently accepted into the graduate program at MIT. He was talking about me, my research, my achievements, my MIT acceptance that I'd only shared with the faculty advisor last month. But why was he announcing all of this to the entire graduation ceremony? Furthermore, the dean's voice grew stronger. This exceptional individual completed her degree while working 20 hours a week to support herself, after her family withdrew financial support during her sophomore year. A gasp escaped my lips. How did he know about that? I'd never told anyone the real reason I'd started working so many hours. When my parents had stopped sending money, I'd been too embarrassed to explain why. I'd simply told people I wanted work experience. The dean's eyes seemed to find mine in the crowd. Jessica Marie Martinez, would you please come to the stage? The walk to the stage felt like it lasted forever, and no time at all. Every step echoed in the suddenly silent auditorium. Thousands of pairs of eyes followed my movement as I made my way down the row, past my stunned classmates, and toward the stairs leading to the platform. My legs felt unsteady, but somehow I managed to climb those steps without tripping over my gown. Dean Harrison stood waiting for me, his expression warm but serious. As I approached, he extended his hand. "Jessica," he said quietly, so only I could hear, "you deserve this moment." The confusion must have been written all over my face because he gave me a reassuring nod before turning back to the microphone. But instead of simply handing me my diploma and sending me off with a handshake like every other graduate, he kept talking. "This young woman represents everything we hope to achieve in higher education," his voice boomed across the auditorium. "She has overcome obstacles that would have defeated most people, and she did it with grace, determination, and an unwavering commitment to excellence." The applause started slowly, then built into something thunderous. I stood there frozen, holding my diploma, as the entire Northwestern University graduation ceremony erupted in celebration. People were standing, clapping, some even cheering. I could see professors in the faculty section on their feet, and students throughout the auditorium joining in. But as I scanned the crowd during those overwhelming moments, my heart sank again. Still no sign of my parents anywhere. Dean Harrison placed his hand on my shoulder and leaned toward the microphone one more time. "Jessica Martinez, Northwestern University class of 2024. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off." The applause seemed to go on forever. Finally, the dean guided me toward the traditional photo spot, where the university photographer was waiting. But instead of the quick snapshot every other graduate received, he took his time, making sure the shots were perfect. "Your parents must be incredibly proud," the photographer said, as he adjusted his camera settings. I managed a weak smile and nodded, though inside I was falling apart. After the ceremony concluded, I lingered on campus longer than necessary. Other families were gathering for photos, heading to restaurants, loading cars with flowers and gifts. I sat on a bench outside the auditorium, my diploma in its leather folder beside me, watching everyone else celebrate. My phone had been buzzing throughout the ceremony, but I'd ignored it. Now I finally looked at the messages. Dozens of texts from classmates, friends, even people I barely knew, all congratulating me on the dean's special recognition. Sarah had sent a string of crying face emojis and exclamation points. My old high school chemistry teacher had somehow seen a video someone posted and wrote, "So proud! You've always been special!" But nothing from Mom, Dad, or Carlos. At 4:30 p.m., I finally called home. The party was supposed to start at 5. Maybe they were just busy with last-minute preparations and had forgotten to charge their phones. Maybe there was a reasonable explanation for everything. Dad answered on the first ring, which was unusual. He typically let calls go to voicemail when he was busy. "Congratulations, Misha," he said, but his voice sounded strained. "Thanks, Dad. That was unexpected with the dean and everything. I'm heading home now. Should I come straight to the community center, or do you want me to stop by the house first? There was a long pause. In the background, I could hear voices and what sounded like music. The party had already started. Jessica, we need to talk. Those 5 words made my stomach drop. What's wrong? Is someone hurt? No, nobody's hurt. It's just the party. We made some changes. What kind of changes? Another pause, longer this time. Maybe it's better if you come home first. We can explain everything. I hung up and drove the hour-and-a-half back to Riverside in a daze. The familiar streets of my childhood neighborhood looked the same as always, but everything felt different. When I pulled into our driveway, I noticed immediately that there were no cars lining the street, no signs of any party preparation. Our house looked exactly like it did on any other Saturday evening. I walked through the front door to find Mom sitting alone at the kitchen table, still in her work clothes, not the dress she'd bought specifically for my graduation party, not the jewelry she'd been planning to wear, just her regular Saturday outfit. "Where is everyone?" I asked. Mom looked up with red-rimmed eyes. "Sit down, Jessica." "Where's my party, Mom?" "There is no party." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What do you mean there's no party?" "You've been planning this for months. You rented the community center. You invited the whole neighborhood. We canceled it last week." "Canceled it? Why didn't anyone tell me?" Dad appeared in the doorway, looking more uncomfortable than I'd ever seen him. We tried to figure out how to explain, but we couldn't find the right words. Explain what? What could possibly be so bad that you'd cancel my graduation party without telling me? Mom and Dad exchanged a look that I couldn't interpret. Finally, Mom spoke. "Your cousin Elena is getting married next month." I stared at her, waiting for more information that would make this make sense. "Okay? What does that have to do with my graduation?" "The wedding is expensive. Really expensive. And your Aunt Carmen asked us to help pay for it because they're struggling financially." The pieces started coming together, but I didn't want to believe what I was hearing. "You canceled my graduation party to pay for Elena's wedding?" "It's not that simple, Jessica." "Then explain it to me." Dad cleared his throat. "Elena's wedding is next month, but they needed the money now to secure the venue and the catering. And your aunt. She reminded us that Elena has never had a big celebration. No quinceañera, no big high school graduation party. This wedding is her one chance." "And I've had celebrations?" "You had your high school graduation party," Mom said quietly. "That was a backyard barbecue with 20 people. And your quinceañera was beautiful." "I didn't have a quinceañera. I asked for one, and you said we couldn't afford it, remember? You said we needed to save money for my college fund instead." The silence that followed was deafening. Mom was crying now, tears streaming down her cheeks. Dad was staring at the floor. "There's more," Mom whispered. "More?" "We used some of your college fund, too. For Elena's wedding." The room started spinning. "What college fund? I've been working 20 hours a week and taking out loans because you said there was no college fund left." "There was money left. Not a lot, but some. Elena needed help, and family comes first." "I'm not family?" "Of course you're family, but you're doing fine on your own. You got into MIT, you have scholarships, you're successful. Elena has struggled her whole life. She dropped out of high school, she's been working minimum wage jobs, and this wedding is the first good thing that's happened to her." I stood up slowly, my diploma folder still clutched in my hand. "So you decided that my graduation, 4 years of engineering school, getting into MIT, none of that was worth celebrating because Elena needs a fancy wedding?" "It's not like that, Jessica." "Then what is it like? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you chose your niece over your daughter." The words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Nobody spoke for what felt like hours. Finally, I headed toward the door. "Where are you going?" Mom called after me. "I don't know, but I know I can't be here right now." "Jessica, please, let's talk about this." I turned back to face them both. "You want to talk? Here's what I want to say. Today, the Dean of Northwestern University stopped an entire graduation ceremony to make sure everyone knew who I was. He announced my achievements, my GPA, my MIT acceptance, things I never told him directly. He made sure I got the recognition I deserved. I paused, looking at their faces. A complete stranger cared more about celebrating my success than my own parents did. With that, I walked out of the house where I'd grown up, got in my car, and drove away, not knowing where I was going, but knowing I couldn't stay. I found myself driving aimlessly through Riverside's empty streets, tears blurring my vision as the weight of everything crashed down on me. My phone kept buzzing with messages I couldn't bring myself to read. The graduation cap sitting on my passenger seat felt like a mockery now, a symbol of an achievement that apparently meant nothing to the people who were supposed to love me most. Without really planning it, I pulled into the parking lot of Mel's Diner, the 24-hour restaurant where I'd spent countless late nights studying during high school. The familiar neon sign flickered in the growing darkness, and something about its steady rhythm felt comforting. Inside, the place was nearly empty, except for a few truck drivers and late shift workers grabbing coffee. I slid into the same corner booth where I used to review chemistry notes and draft college application essays, back when I still believed my parents were saving every penny for my education. The waitress, an older woman named Betty who'd been working there since I was a kid, approached with a coffee pot and a sympathetic smile. Well, if it isn't our little genius. Heard through the grapevine today was graduation day. Congratulations, honey. Thank you, I managed, accepting the coffee she poured without asking. You don't look like someone who just graduated from college. What's eating at you? Maybe it was the exhaustion, or maybe it was just the relief of talking to someone who wasn't family. But I found myself telling Betty everything. The canceled party, the wedding fund, the years of working while my parents claimed there was no money left for school. Betty listened without interrupting, occasionally refilling my coffee cup and sliding extra napkins across the table when my voice cracked. That's a hell of a thing, she said when I finished. Your own graduation party. The worst part is I keep wondering what else they've lied about. Were they ever really proud of me? Or was that just something they said? Did they ever actually believe I could succeed? Or were they just waiting for me to fail so they could say they knew all along? Honey, can I tell you something? I've been working in this diner for 32 years. I've seen every kind of family drama you can imagine walk through that door. And you know what I've learned? I shook my head. Sometimes the people who are supposed to celebrate us are too caught up in their own stuff to see what's right in front of them. That doesn't make it hurt less, but it doesn't make your achievements any smaller either. She paused, wiping down the table even though it was already clean. What did you say that Dean fella announced about you today? He talked about my GPA, my research, and getting into MIT. He said I represented everything they hoped to achieve in higher education. And how many students graduated today? Quote, about 3,000. 3,000 students, and he stopped the whole ceremony just for you. That man didn't even know you personally, right? Not really. I mean, I'd seen him at department events, but we'd never actually talked. So a stranger, a very important stranger who's seen thousands of students come and go, thought you were special enough to halt an entire graduation ceremony. Maybe you should listen to him instead of your parents. Betty's words hit something deep inside me. She was right. Dean Harrison had no reason to single me out unless my achievements truly were exceptional. He'd risked disrupting a carefully choreographed ceremony because he believed I deserved recognition. My phone buzzed again. This time, instead of ignoring it, I looked. The message was from Professor Angela Foster, my research advisor and the person who'd recommended me for MIT. Jessica, I saw a video of your graduation ceremony online. Dean Harrison's recognition was well-deserved. You've earned every bit of that praise. I hope you're celebrating tonight. You should be incredibly proud. I stared at the message, then scrolled through the dozens of others I'd been avoiding. Sarah had included a link to a video someone had posted on TikTok. With shaking hands, I clicked on it. The video showed the moment Dean Harrison took the microphone and announced my name. But what struck me wasn't his words. It was the reaction of the crowd. Thousands of people, most of whom had never heard of me before that moment, applauding and cheering. The camera caught students in caps and gowns, standing up, parents in the audience clapping enthusiastically, even faculty members on stage smiling and nodding approvingly. Strangers had celebrated my success more than my own family. The video had already been viewed over 50,000 times, with hundreds of comments from people saying things like, "This gave me chills," and "What an amazing moment," and "She must be incredible to get recognition like that." I realized Betty was watching me scroll through the responses. See that? She said. That's what real recognition looks like. That's people seeing your worth without any agenda, without any complicated family history. Pure appreciation for your accomplishments. She sat down across from me, something she'd never done in all the years I'd been coming here. You want my advice? Don't go back there tonight. Don't sit in that house feeling sorry for yourself while your parents feel guilty but don't know how to fix what they broke. You just graduated from one of the best engineering schools in the country. You're going to MIT. You've got a whole life ahead of you. But what do I do right now? I don't even have anywhere to go. My apartment lease ended yesterday, and I was supposed to stay with them until I left for Boston next month. Betty smiled. You know what? My daughter Rachel just moved out of her apartment above the auto shop downtown. The place is furnished, rent's cheap, and the landlord owes me a favor. It's not fancy, but it's yours if you want it. I couldn't ask you to. You're not asking, I'm offering. Consider it a graduation gift from someone who's been watching you work your ass off in this booth for years. An hour later, I was following Betty's directions to a small apartment above Murphy's Auto Repair. The space was tiny. A studio with a kitchenette, a fold-out couch, and a bathroom barely big enough to turn around in. But it was clean, it was furnished, and most importantly, it was mine. As I sat on the couch that night, my diploma propped against the window where the streetlight illuminated it, I made a decision. I wasn't going to waste any more energy trying to understand why my parents had chosen Elena's wedding over my graduation. I wasn't going to keep wondering if they loved me or were proud of me. Instead, I was going to focus on the truth that Dean Harrison had announced to 3,000 people. I was exceptional. I had overcome obstacles, excelled academically, and earned my place at MIT through my own hard work and determination. My phone rang. It was Mom. For the first time all day, I answered. Jessica, thank God. Where are you? We've been worried sick. I'm safe. I have a place to stay. Come home, please. We can work this out. Actually, Mom, I think I am home. For the first time in a long time, I'm exactly where I belong. What does that mean? It means I'm done trying to earn love and recognition from people who can't see my worth. Today, a room full of strangers celebrated my achievements. My own parents couldn't even show up. Jessica, that's not fair. We love you. We're proud of you. If that were true, there would have been a party tonight. There would have been family and friends and cake and photos. Instead, Elena got my college fund and my celebration so she could have the wedding she wanted. Quote, Mom was crying again. We made a mistake, a terrible mistake, but we can fix this. No, you can't. You can't undo the choice you made. You can't give me back my graduation day. And you can't change the fact that when it mattered most, you chose someone else. I hung up and turned off my phone. The next morning, I would start looking for a job to earn money for moving expenses to Boston. I would pack up the few belongings I'd left at my parents' house. I would begin the process of building a life that didn't depend on people who saw me as less important than their extended family's social events. But that night, I sat in my tiny new apartment, looking at my diploma in the streetlight, and felt something I hadn't experienced in years, complete independence. And for the first time since walking across that stage, I smiled. 3 weeks had passed since graduation, and I'd settled into a routine that felt surprisingly natural. My days started at 6 a.m. with a run through Riverside's quiet streets, followed by job applications and freelance engineering consulting work I'd found through former professors. The tiny apartment above Murphy's Auto Repair had become my sanctuary, a place where every decision was mine alone. I'd been deliberately avoiding the parts of town where I might run into family or old neighbors, but that Tuesday morning, as I walked out of the post office after mailing my apartment deposit to MIT, I heard a familiar voice calling my name. Jessica! Jessica Martinez! I turned to see Mrs. Rodriguez, our next-door neighbor since I was 5 years old. She was hurrying across the parking lot with her arms outstretched, her face bright with excitement. Misha, I've been hoping to see you. I heard about your graduation ceremony. How wonderful! The whole neighborhood has been talking about it. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? The video. Someone posted it online, and Mrs. Chen showed it to me on her phone. The way that Dean talked about you, calling you exceptional, stopping the whole ceremony. We were all so proud. I must have watched it 10 times. She paused, her expression shifting to confusion. But then I kept waiting to hear about your graduation party. Your mother had invited everyone, weeks ago, told us all about the big celebration. But then, she trailed off, looking uncomfortable. Then what? Well, she called everyone the weekend before graduation and said it was canceled. Family emergency, she said. But you looked perfectly fine in that graduation video, so I wasn't sure what happened. The pieces clicked into place. My parents hadn't just canceled my party. They'd told the entire neighborhood there was a family emergency to avoid explaining the real reason. There was no emergency, I said quietly. They canceled it to pay for my cousin's wedding instead. Mrs. Rodriguez's mouth fell open. They canceled your graduation party for Elena's wedding? I nodded, and she shook her head in disbelief. That girl has been nothing but trouble since she was a teenager. Remember when she stole money from the church collection? And now your parents choose her over their own daughter's college graduation? You don't have to. No, Misha, this is wrong. Completely wrong. Her voice grew louder, attracting stares from other people in the parking lot. You know what? I'm calling everyone who was invited to that party. We're going to throw you a proper celebration ourselves. Mrs. Rodriguez, that's really not necessary. It absolutely is necessary. You don't cancel your child's graduation party. I don't care what the reason is. Before I could protest further, she was already pulling out her phone. Hello, Carmen? Carmen Patel? Yes, it's Maria Rodriguez. Listen, we need to talk about Jessica Martinez's graduation party. Over the next hour, while I sat in shocked silence on a bench outside the post office, Mrs. Rodriguez made call after call. She contacted every family in our neighborhood who had been invited to the original party, explaining what had really happened and proposing a solution. Saturday night, 7 o'clock, my backyard, she announced when she finished. The Patels are bringing decorations, the Johnsons are handling music, and Mrs. Kim is making her famous tres leches cake. Everyone's contributing something. I can't let you do this, I said, overwhelmed by the kindness of these people who barely knew me as an adult. Jessica, listen to me. We watched you grow up. We saw you walking to school every morning with your backpack full of books. We watched you working at that diner until all hours, saving money for college. We saw your parents' car leave for your high school graduation, and we celebrated when they came back with photos of you in your cap and gown. Her eyes filled with tears. We've been invested in your success for years. When your parents decided you weren't worth celebrating, they forfeited the right to speak for this community. We're celebrating whether they like it or not. That Saturday evening, I stood at the gate of Mrs. Rodriguez's backyard, barely recognizing the space. String lights hung between trees, creating a warm glow over tables covered in bright tablecloths. A banner reading, "Congratulations, Jessica," stretched between two posts, and balloons in Northwestern's purple and white colors bobbed in the evening breeze. But what took my breath away wasn't the decorations, it was the people. Nearly 30 neighbors had shown up, many of whom I hadn't spoken to in years. Mr. Kim from the corner market was there with his wife and teenage son. The Patel family had brought their elderly parents. Even the young couple who'd moved in down the street just last year had come. Mrs. Chen, my old boss from the tutoring center where I'd worked during high school, approached me with a huge smile. "Jessica, look at you, all grown up and going to MIT. I still remember when you helped my daughter with calculus. You made such a difference in her confidence." "I can't believe you remember that." "Are you kidding? Sarah talks about you all the time. She's studying engineering now, too, partly because you showed her she was smart enough for advanced math." One by one, neighbors came up to share memories I'd forgotten. Times I'd helped carry groceries, shoveled snow from elderly neighbors' driveways, or tutored younger kids in the neighborhood. Each story revealed connections I'd never realized existed. Mr. Johnson, who lived 3 houses down, pulled me aside during dinner. "I want you to know something, Jessica. When my wife was sick 2 years ago, your mother used to brag about you constantly. Every conversation was about your grades, your internships, your achievements. She couldn't stop talking about how proud she was." "Really?" "Really. Which makes what happened with your graduation party even more confusing to all of us. We know your parents love you and are proud of you. We just don't understand how they could make such a terrible decision." As the evening went on, I found myself relaxing in a way I hadn't since graduation day. These people were celebrating not just my academic achievements, but the person I'd been throughout my childhood and teenage years. They saw me as part of their community, worthy of recognition and support. Around 9 p.m., Mrs. Rodriguez called for everyone's attention. Before we cut the cake, I want to say something. Jessica, when you were little, you used to come to my kitchen window every morning before school. Do you remember? I nodded. You always had fresh fruit cut up. That's right, and every single morning, you would say, "Good morning, Mrs. Rodriguez. Thank you for the snack. I'm going to study hard today so I can help people when I grow up." The gathering grew quiet, everyone listening intently. Even as a 7-year-old, you knew you were going to do something important with your life. You had this determination, this sense of purpose that was remarkable to see in someone so young. She paused, looking around at the faces illuminated by string lights. Today, you're going to MIT to study advanced engineering. You're going to help design systems that might save lives, improve communities, or solve problems we can't even imagine yet. That little girl who wanted to help people is about to change the world. The applause that followed was different from the polite clapping at the graduation ceremony. This was intimate, personal, filled with genuine affection and pride from people who had watched me grow up. When Mrs. Kim brought out the tres leches cake decorated with MIT Class of 2028 in purple frosting, I finally broke down crying. Not tears of sadness or frustration, but tears of gratitude for this unexpected family that had formed around me. As I stood there surrounded by neighbors who had chosen to celebrate me when my own parents couldn't, I realized something profound. Family isn't just about blood relations. Sometimes the people who truly see your worth and choose to support your dreams are the ones who have been quietly cheering you on from the sidelines all along. That night, I went home to my tiny apartment with a heart full of joy and a refrigerator full of leftover cake, finally understanding that I had never been alone. I just hadn't been looking in the right places for love and support. The Monday after the neighborhood party, I was sitting in my apartment reviewing MIT course catalogs when my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize with a Northwestern area code. Curious, I answered. Is this Jessica Martinez? The voice was professional, unfamiliar. Yes, this is Jessica. This is Amanda Walsh from Channel 7 News. We received a tip about your graduation ceremony and the community response. We'd like to do a feature story about your experience, if you're interested. My heart skipped. A news story? Quote, "The video of Dean Harrison's announcement has gone viral. It's been shared over 500,000 times across social media platforms. People are calling it one of the most powerful graduation moments they've ever seen. We understand there's more to the story about why the dean felt compelled to give you that recognition." I hesitated. The last thing I wanted was to publicly embarrass my parents or air family drama on television. I appreciate the interest, but I don't think. We also heard about the neighborhood celebration this weekend. That story. A community coming together to honor someone whose own family couldn't. That's exactly the kind of positive news our viewers need to hear right now. Something in her tone made me reconsider. This wasn't about exposing my parents. It was about highlighting the incredible kindness of my neighbors. What would the story focus on? Your achievements, the dean's recognition, and how your community stepped up to celebrate you properly. We'd interview some of your neighbors, maybe film at the auto shop where you're living now, show how you're preparing for MIT despite the challenges. The interview was scheduled for Thursday afternoon. Amanda Walsh arrived with a cameraman and a sound technician, transforming my tiny apartment into a makeshift studio. She was younger than I'd expected, probably in her early 30s, with an easy smile that put me at ease. Before we start rolling, can you tell me off the record what really happened with your family? I explained about the canceled party, Elena's wedding, and the diverted college fund. Amanda listened with growing amazement. And your parents never told you they were canceling the party? They planned to tell me after graduation. I think they hoped I'd be so happy about the ceremony itself that I wouldn't be as upset about the party. But instead, you found out when you got home, expecting to celebrate with family and friends. Exactly. When the cameras started rolling, Amanda's questions were thoughtful and respectful. She asked about my academic journey, my research in sustainable energy systems, and my plans at MIT. She avoided prying into family details, focusing instead on my resilience and achievements. What did it mean to you when Dean Harrison made that announcement? It was overwhelming, I said honestly. I'd never experienced that kind of public recognition before. To have someone I barely knew stop an entire ceremony to acknowledge my work, it was validation I didn't even know I needed. And then your neighbors organized their own celebration? That was completely unexpected. These are people who've watched me grow up, but I had no idea they were so invested in my success. When my own family couldn't celebrate with me, my community stepped in without being asked. The segment aired the following Tuesday evening. I watched from Mrs. Rodriguez's living room, surrounded by the same neighbors who had thrown my party. The piece was beautifully edited, showing clips from the graduation ceremony, footage of my small apartment, and interviews with several neighbors who spoke about watching me grow up and being inspired by my determination. But what happened after the broadcast aired was something none of us expected. My phone started ringing Wednesday morning and didn't stop. The first call was from a woman in Chicago whose daughter was starting engineering school in the fall. I saw your story last night, and I wanted my daughter to see what's possible. Would you be willing to talk to her about your experience? The second call was from a representative at Boeing, the company where I'd interned. Jessica, we saw the news piece. We'd like to discuss some opportunities that might interest you, both for summer work and potentially after you finish at MIT. The third call was from someone I never expected to hear from, Dean Harrison himself. Jessica, I hope you don't mind me calling directly. I saw the news story, and I wanted you to know that Northwestern is incredibly proud to have you as an alumna. Thank you, Dean Harrison. I still can't believe you stopped the ceremony for me. I want you to understand why I did that. 3 days before graduation, your research advisor, Professor Foster, came to my office. She told me about your academic achievements, yes, but more importantly, she told me about your character. I listened, fascinated to hear the backstory I'd never known. She explained how you'd been working 20 hours a week while maintaining a 3.8 GPA, how you'd mentored younger students despite your own busy schedule, and how you'd never complained or asked for special consideration despite obvious financial hardships. Professor Foster said all that? She did, but what convinced me to make that announcement was when she told me about your research presentation last month. Apparently, you'd been up all night working on a project, came straight to class without sleeping, and still delivered one of the most insightful presentations she'd seen in 20 years of teaching. I remembered that day vividly. I'd been battling a particularly difficult equation and had lost track of time completely. She said when she asked if you were okay, you told her you were exactly where you belonged, tired but happy, challenged but confident. That's when I knew you represented everything we hope to instill in our graduates. The phone calls continued throughout the week. A scholarship foundation wanted to feature my story in their next newsletter. A high school in Los Angeles invited me to speak to their engineering students. A women's professional organization asked if I'd consider joining their mentorship program. But the call that surprised me most came Friday evening. It was Carlos. Jessica, I saw the news story. My brother's voice sounded different, older, more serious than I remembered. Carlos, how are you? I'm okay, but I need to tell you something about graduation day. What about it? I lied about having finals. I was actually here in town that day. My stomach tightened. What do you mean you were here? I came to watch you graduate. I was in the auditorium, in the back section where you couldn't see me. You were there? I couldn't miss it, Jessica. You're my sister. I've been proud of you my whole life. Tears started flowing before I could stop them. Then why didn't you say anything? Why did you text about finals? Because Mom and Dad made me promise not to tell you I was coming. They were afraid if you knew family was there, you'd expect them to show up too, and they weren't ready to face you after canceling the party. So you watched the whole ceremony alone? Yeah, and when Dean Harrison made that announcement about you, I was cheering louder than anyone. I recorded the whole thing on my phone. That's actually the video that ended up going viral. I posted it because I was so proud and angry at the same time. You posted the original video? I tagged it with Northwestern's hashtag and wrote something like, "This is what happens when you're too exceptional to ignore." I never expected it to blow up like it did. The revelation that my own brother had been there, had been proud enough to film and share the moment, shifted something fundamental in my understanding of what had happened that day. Carlos, why didn't Mom and Dad come if they knew how important it was? I think they were ashamed. They knew they'd made a terrible choice, and they couldn't face seeing you succeed while knowing they'd let you down. That doesn't make it okay. No, it doesn't. But I wanted you to know that someone who loves you was there that day, even if you couldn't see me. That night, as I sat in my tiny apartment processing everything that had happened since the news story aired, I realized my life had fundamentally changed. The recognition from Dean Harrison had opened doors I never could have imagined. The community celebration had shown me what genuine support looked like. And now, the media attention was creating opportunities that could shape my entire future. Most importantly, I'd learned that the people who truly matter will find ways to show up for you, even when circumstances are complicated. Sometimes they stop graduation ceremonies, sometimes they organize neighborhood parties, and sometimes they sit quietly in the back of an auditorium, filming your moment of triumph to share with the world. My parents had failed me, but I was surrounded by people who hadn't. 2 months later, I was packing the last of my belongings into my car for the drive to Boston when Mrs. Rodriguez knocked on my apartment door. She was holding a large manila envelope and wearing the kind of expression that meant she had something important to say. "This came to my house yesterday," she said, handing me the envelope. "It's addressed to you, but the return address is your parents' house. I think they're having your mail forwarded to me because they don't know your exact address here." I recognized my mother's handwriting immediately. Inside the envelope were 3 items: a check for $3,847, a printed copy of the news article about my story, and a handwritten letter. The letter was 4 pages long, front and back, written in my mother's careful script. I sat on my couch to read it, while Mrs. Rodriguez waited quietly by the window. "Ami querida Jessica," it began, "I have started this letter 100 times and thrown it away 100 times because no words feel adequate for what I need to say to you." The letter went on to explain things I'd never known. How my father had been laid off from his job 3 months before graduation, but hadn't told anyone because he was ashamed. How they'd been struggling to pay the mortgage and keep up with Carlos's college expenses. How Elena's mother had called crying, saying the wedding venue required full payment immediately or they'd lose their deposit, and Elena was threatening to call off the engagement entirely. "We panicked," Mom wrote. "We thought you were so strong, so independent that you would understand. We thought your success was proof that you didn't need us the way Elena needed us. We were wrong about everything." She described watching the news story and realizing how badly they'd misjudged the situation. How the neighbors had called them afterward, some angry, some disappointed, all making it clear that they'd witnessed something inexcusable. When we saw that Dean announce your achievements to the whole world, when we heard him say you represented everything they hoped to achieve in education, we finally understood what we had thrown away. Not just a party, but the chance to be the parents you deserved that day. The most painful part of the letter was near the end. Elena's wedding was beautiful, and she was grateful for our help. But 3 weeks later, she called to say she was getting divorced. The marriage lasted less than a month. All that money, all that sacrifice, all the damage to our relationship with you, it was for something that didn't even last. The check, Mom explained, represented every penny they'd spent on Elena's wedding. They'd taken out a loan to repay it, and it was mine without conditions. "This won't buy back your graduation day. It won't erase what we did. But maybe it can help you start your new life at MIT without the financial stress we caused you." The letter ended with a request I hadn't expected. "We don't deserve your forgiveness, and we're not asking for it. But if you're ever willing, we would like to take you to dinner before you leave for Boston. Not to make excuses, not to ask for anything in return, but to hear about your plans and to tell you how proud we are of the woman you've become, with or without our help." I sat staring at the letter for a long time after finishing it. Mrs. Rodriguez had made coffee and was waiting patiently at my small kitchen table. "What does it say, Meja?" I handed her the letter. She read it slowly, her expression shifting from skepticism to surprise, to something that might have been approval. "This is a real apology," she said finally. "Not trying to justify what they did, not making excuses, just acknowledging they were wrong. But does it matter? The damage is done." Quote, "The question isn't whether the damage is done. The question is whether you want to give them a chance to do better going forward." That evening, I called my parents for the first time since graduation night. Dad answered, and his voice cracked when he heard mine. Jessica, thank you for calling. I got Mom's letter. She worked on that for weeks, rewrote it over and over. Dad, I need you to understand something. I'm not calling because I'm ready to forgive everything that happened. I'm calling because I'm leaving for MIT next week, and I don't want to start that chapter of my life carrying this anger. Whatever you need from us, we'll do it. I want to have dinner with you and Mom before I leave, but I have conditions. Of course, whatever you want. No talk about Elena's wedding or divorce, no explanations about why you made the choices you made. I've read the letter, I understand your reasoning, but I don't want to rehash it. Understood. And I want you to understand that this dinner doesn't mean everything goes back to normal. I'm still hurt. I still feel like you chose someone else over me when it mattered most. But I also don't want to leave for Boston with this wall between us. That's fair, Jessica. More than fair. We met at Romano's, the Italian restaurant where we'd celebrated my high school graduation 4 years earlier. My parents looked older than I remembered, and there was a heaviness in their movements that hadn't been there before. Mom hugged me when I arrived, holding on longer than usual. You look good, Mija. Strong. The conversation was awkward at first, but gradually found its rhythm. They asked about my plans at MIT, my research interests, my living arrangements in Boston. I told them about the opportunities that had come from the news story, the scholarship offers, the speaking engagements. We saw the news piece, Dad said quietly. We recorded it, watched it probably 20 times. You should be proud of yourself, Mom added. Look what you've accomplished, what you've built, all on your own. I wasn't completely on my own, I said, thinking of Dean Harrison, Mrs. Rodriguez, the neighborhood community, even Carlos secretly filming my graduation. I had support, just not from where I expected it. Toward the end of dinner, Dad reached across the table and placed his hand over mine. Jessica, I want you to know that every choice we made was wrong, but every feeling we had about you was right. We've been proud of you since you were 5 years old, asking for extra math homework. We've bragged about you to everyone who would listen. We just failed you when you needed us most. I know you're proud of me, I said. Mrs. Rodriguez told me how much you used to talk about my achievements. That's what made the cancellation so confusing and hurtful. We got scared, Mom said simply. Scared about money, scared about family obligations, scared about disappointing people. And in trying not to disappoint Elena, we disappointed the person who mattered most. When dinner ended, we stood in the parking lot for a moment, none of us quite ready to say goodbye. I'll call you when I get to Boston, I said. And maybe you can visit sometime, see the campus, meet my professors. Mom started crying. We'd love that. But I need time to rebuild trust. This dinner is a first step, not a destination. We understand, Dad said. We'll take whatever relationship you're willing to give us, and we'll try to earn more. 3 days later, I loaded my car with everything I owned and drove away from Riverside. In my rearview mirror, I could see Mrs. Rodriguez and several neighbors waving from their front yards. My parents stood at the end of their driveway, watching until I turned the corner. The drive to Boston took 2 days. As I crossed state lines, leaving California behind for the first time in my life, I thought about everything that had led to this moment. A graduation ceremony where a dean stopped everything to recognize my achievements. A family that failed me at a crucial moment, but was trying to make amends. A community that stepped up when it mattered most. Most importantly, I'd learned that my worth wasn't determined by who chose to celebrate me or support me. The dean's recognition had been wonderful, the neighborhood party had been healing, and my parents' apology had been necessary. But none of those things had made me who I was. I was Jessica Martinez, mechanical engineer, MIT graduate student, and someone who had built a successful life through determination, hard work, and the quiet confidence that I deserved good things, with or without anyone else's permission. When I pulled into the parking lot of my MIT dormitory and saw the campus where I'd spend the next several years of my life, I felt something I'd been searching for since graduation day, complete peace with my choices and my future. My phone buzzed with a text from Carlos. Proud of you, sis. Go change the world. And for the first time in months, I believed I actually could. Looking for more? We've got two amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.